Hello and welcome back once again to Rage Gaming and our next news update for Elden Ring. It's DLC and what even's going on with that anymore. As it stands, we have a big rumour in the community about a possible PvE update, like the PvP update of 1.08 with the Colosseum PvP modes, but maybe something more specifically for PvE. And hopefully there'll be new rewards tied to it. That's a lot to hope for, but it does seem possible. In fact, we're currently expecting big news from FromSoft in the very near future, within weeks or maybe even sooner than that. That promise comes from Bandai directly, but let's go over it all now. Let's start with a big, depressing starting point to begin with, the Game Awards itself. Elden Ring in its first major DLC update has been the massive question for about the last 6-7 months or so. Within that, 3 events occurred that From Software have a history of making big announcements at, the last of which was the Game Awards. After nothing at the other two, a lot of people, including myself, figured that the Game Awards had maybe paid for the privilege of the big announcement, to get the hype and interest at that show. As it turns out, they may have done that, but for Armored Core instead, which was what From Software currently had to show, and we might have actually seen Armored Core's trailer sooner, if not for that, maybe. Either way, Elden Ring did win Game of the Year, as it well deserved, but there was no Elden Ring announcement. Instead, the day before that event, there was the very sudden drop of the 1.08 Colosseum update, our biggest content update for the game, and well, really the only proper one we've had. During the Game of the Year speech by Miyazaki though, he somewhat apologised for the situation and assured us that Elden Ring has more coming. And at this point I would say it's fair to imagine something went wrong with the first DLC, and that it's just taking longer than expected. In fact, that seems to be exactly the case. Lance McDonald, a consistent source of FromSoft information proven to be true over time, brought to light that this is, officially, DLC 1, referred to in the files in fact as exactly that. Even this briefly popped up, referring to the Colosseum stuff as, DLC, before being removed quickly. It's possible that this update was meant to be a lot more than it actually is, and was just rushed out just before the Game Awards in its more simple state, for free, to help combat the situation. Still, it came as a massive disappointment to those not interested in PvP. While the Colosseums have been brilliant for me personally, that consistent source of PvP, matchmaking, defined rules and so on, as much as I've really been enjoying that mode, and I'm very glad that we got it, I do feel bad for the people who just don't have any interest in it, and therefore they got, nothing. So could that 1.08 update have been more than it eventually was? It seems so. Back in 1.07, many new files were added to the game, not being used by any current content, and screamed DLC prep. Via various data mines then, we saw 30 plus potential boss tags, a new legacy dungeon map, and even new weapon types to list some of the seemingly inbound features. Instead, we have 3 new arenas with 3 modes of play, but no rewards for any of it. So it feels a bit bare bones because of that, and our expectations were a bit higher due to the data mine, and that kind of made it feel like a bit of a blow. After some time has passed though, it seems the community has been thinking, what are those data mine files actually for? Unused assets to come later? Is this enough for a full Elden Ring DLC? And so a popular theory has sprung, boss rush mode. So again, in the files now are references to a big new map, 30 potential bosses and more. Maybe these 1.07 files aren't in prep for the big DLC, but another smaller content update, planned for 1.08, but pushed back. Allegedly, a boss rush mode has actually been in development for Elden Ring already. I should talk about what this is and what it could look like. It's a very exciting concept for long-term players. It would let you replay the boss encounters of all of Elden Ring without having to make your way there a second time in, say, New Game Plus or a new character, or by joining someone else's world in co-op. This is something we've seen before in From Software games, interestingly with Sekiro, the last From Software game, which did also win Game of the Year and didn't have a proper DLC, that got a boss rush mode after the time that it won the Game of the Year. Included in a small update was this boss rush mode for Sekiro, in which you could challenge specific bosses but also choose to take on a gauntlet of bosses back to back, and there were rewards for doing it with no deaths. So could that be connected to the Colosseums? They'd be a good place, a good staging ground to drop bosses in, and then we could fight them there, which would include a new PvE side to the arenas, to pick and choose which boss you want to fight, potentially with other game modes and challenges beyond that, maybe some rewards, maybe those 30 plus potential bosses in the files of the game could be the 30 we'd pick between to face in this mode. Those new weapon types, the rewards, that could be this. Although, what about the legacy dungeon map? Maybe that would be the place for the boss rush mode, or one of the main modes of play in that. As I said, allegedly a boss rush mode was in development already, but in 1.07 and 1.08, there isn't any clear signs of that in the files right now, only these logical connections. But it does seem, however, we'll soon know what's really coming. In the days following the Game Awards, Bandai Namco themselves emailed the people who have copies of the game, thanking them for the Game of the Year win, and specifically stating that there's more to come, to expect news in the coming days and weeks. They say that it was an incredible year of gaming, and we want to thank the Elden Ring community for their love and support of the game so far, and then went on to say, stay tuned in the days and weeks to come, as there is more Elden Ring news that awaits. For those who have yet to experience Elden Ring, there's no better time than now. So yeah, coming days and weeks, big news coming. We've had little updates and details for 1.08 in the Colosseum after its launch. Maybe that was what was coming in the next days. But what about the weeks? There's nothing so far that seems big and relevant to that. And now, it's been about a month, so it has to be soon, very soon. FromSoft has stated multiple times, Elden Ring's development continues and that more is coming, so we don't need to worry that there isn't. It's just what will it be and when are we going to be told about it? Will it be the boss rush? Will it be the actual DLC and the main news we're desperate for? Or is it just PR talk to distract us? Obviously, it's hard to say. But if it is another free content patch, call it 1.09 and a boss rush update at that, what will that look like? How will it work? I think the 100 plus bosses in Elden Ring might be too much to hope for in that mode. Maybe they'll pick a more specific selection of that roster. The big boys, the most interesting ones. The bosses that matter, the more unique ones. As it stands, there are 15 remembrance bosses, but that feels too little for the potential roster you could pick from. There are so many good bosses in the open world, mini bosses, or smaller scale boss fights that should be included. Just maybe not all of them. If they were thinking maybe roughly 30, then the 15 remembrance bosses, they make sense. But then 15 plus more of maybe the more unique world bosses to buff that roster out, that seems fair. If they were to add other modes like gauntlet modes, using the bigger roster of bosses would be more wise, to see a bit more variety in the content. But if we look back at the Sekiro boss rush mode, they did alter the original boss fights a bit, adding a lot more interest to the rematch, by adding new moves and so on. A new version of all the major players with some interesting twists and maybe new rewards like weapons and armor, that'd be great. That'd be a really satisfying, smaller free content update, especially for the PvE players who are a bit ignored in 1.08. Could that happen? Or will it be attached to the proper DLC whenever that comes? We don't know, but it is interesting to think about. As it stands, we are waiting for that coming news drop they promised, if that's even real. Lots of suspicious stuff were introduced in the files of the game that we continue to speculate upon. I just hope that the DLC, when it does finally drop, it happens before 2023 is too far underway. It's already been a long way. We're now almost 1 year after Elden Ring's release already, and that shocks me because I still play the game almost every day. It's made a huge impact on my life in the last year, and it deserves new content. So hopefully, we hear about that soon. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.